The Atlantic hung silent and lightless as Erich Topp eased the periscope upward, its metal chilled by the night. Through the narrow lens, he caught sight of a lone silhouette pacing before convoy, HX 156, an American destroyer cutting confidently through the dark. Inside U-552, the crew stood motionless, the air thick with diesel fumes and dread. "Standby tubes 1 and 2, he ordered softly. Deep in the hull, torpedoes clicked into readiness. Topp let out a long, steady breath. Fire! The shot that followed would stun the world. German submarine U-552 was a Type VIIc U-boat, constructed for the Kriegsmarine during the Second World War. Her keel was laid on December 1, 1939, at the Blohm+Voss shipyard in Hamburg. The German Type VIIc submarines succeeded the shorter Type 7B class. U-552 displaced 769 tons on the surface and 871 tons when submerged. Her overall length measured 67.10 meters or 220 feet 2 inches, with a pressure hull length of 50.50 meters or 165 feet 8 inches, a beam of 6.20 meters or 20 feet 4 inches, height of 9.60 meters or 31 feet 6 inches, and draft of 4.74 meters or 15 feet 7 inches. Power came from two 4-stroke, 6-cylinder supercharged diesel engines generating 2,800 to 3,200 metric horsepower for surface running, and two Brown double-acting electric motors delivering 750 metric horsepower when submerged. She featured two shafts with 1.23 meters or 4 feet propellers and could dive to depths of up to 230 meters or 750 feet. The submarine could reach a top surface speed of 17.7 knots and a maximum submerged speed of 7.6 knots. When underwater, she could travel 80 nautical miles at 4 knots, and when surfaced, she had a range of 8,500 nautical miles at 10 knots. U-552 was armed with 553.3 centimeter or 21-inch torpedo tubes, 4 at the bow and 1 at the stern, carrying 14 torpedoes in total. Her deck armament included an 8.8 centimeter or 3.46-inch SK C-35 naval gun with 220 rounds and a 2 centimeter or 0.79-inch C-30 anti-aircraft gun. The crew complement ranged between 44 and 60 men. After her construction was completed on the 4th of December 1940, U-552 underwent 2 months of shakedown training to ready her crew and equipment for combat duty. She earned the nickname Roter Teufel, Red Devil, from her emblem, a grinning red devil painted on the conning tower. Among the more successful of her class, U-552 served continuously for over 3 years, sinking or damaging 35 Allied vessels totaling 164,276 gross register tons or GRT, with 1,190 tons sunk and 26,910 GRT damaged. Over her career, she took part in 21 Wolfpacks. She departed Kiel on the 13th of February for her first official patrol, arriving at Helgoland on the 18th of February 1941. This port would serve as U-552's base of operations until her transfer to the occupied French port of Saint-Nazaire in mid-March 1941. U-552's first combat patrol commenced on February 18, 1941, departing Helgoland to patrol the North Sea and the North Atlantic south of Iceland. During this mission, she sank a British tanker and an Icelandic trawler transporting fish. The tanker Cadillac was destroyed north of Scotland on March 1st, and the trawler was sunk south of Iceland on March 10th. After these successes, U-552 returned to Saint-Nazaire. All subsequent patrols were launched from this French port, granting her direct access to the Atlantic and extended operational range. U-552 embarked on her second war patrol on April 7, 1941, departing her new base at Saint-Nazaire for the North Atlantic. She reached her patrol zone southwest of Iceland on April 11th. No enemy vessels were engaged until April 26th, when at 1809 GMT, while positioned between Iceland and northern Scotland, Topp observed a smoke cloud bearing 10 degrees T from a small patrol vessel-sized target. The contact was shadowed at the limit of visibility until nightfall. At 0:10 on the 27th of April, about 130 nautical miles southeast of Iceland, U-552 attacked and sank the trawler Commander Horton with 82 rounds from her 8.8 centimeter gun and 102 from the MGC-30, recording no resistance. The vessel went down with 14 men lost. At about 1100 GMT on April 27th, U-552 was submerged when propeller sounds heard bearing 200 degrees T were detected. Topp began a surface pursuit of a large steamer, noting, "Estimated enemy speed 16 knots, gaining only due to her zigzags." By 1412, at grid position AL3236, the beacon range was within 1,000 meters. From periscope depth, U-552 launched a spread of 3 torpedoes, all striking their target. Minutes later, as the crew lowered lifeboats, U-552 surfaced and closed in for the coup de grace. A 4th torpedo struck aft, with the log noting, "Hit aft 20 meters. Steamer breaks completely amidships. Deck awash. Inn still afloat." On the afternoon of the 28th of April 1941, a significant engagement unfolded about 180 miles south of Iceland. A 5-boat Wolfpack, or Rudel tactic, executed the war's first coordinated submerged daylight attack on a convoy. Spread across roughly 10 miles, the U-boats intercepted an eastbound convoy. U-123, commanded by Karl-Heinz Mola, first sighted convoy HX-121 and summoned U-65, commanded by Joachim Hoppe, U-95 commanded by Gerd Schreiber, U-96 commanded by Heinrich Lehmann Willenbrock, and U-552 to converge. U-552 struck first at 14:15 GMT, torpedoing the British tanker Capulet. 9 men were killed, and the ship was abandoned but remained afloat. At 17:25, U-96 sank 3 vessels with 1 spread. The British tanker Oilfield, 47 dead, 8 survivors. Norwegian tanker Caledonia, 12 dead, 25 survivors. And British freighter Port Hardy, 1 dead. U-65 was later destroyed by depth charges from HMS Douglas, killing all 50 aboard. After striking the tanker Capulet, U-552 found herself hunted. Depth charges rained down in 5 relentless assaults from the destroyers HMS Maori and HMS Inglefield, shaking the hull and forcing the submarine to remain deep beneath the surface for hours as the convoy slipped away. The boat had suffered damage. This would be a harrowing day of pursuit and survival, with attacks from sea and sky, sudden dives, and tense resurgences into the open air. By 01:45 on April 30th, after another silent dive, Erich Topp realized that convoy HX-121 had shifted course northward. The chase was over. Turning south, he reported to the Befehlshaber der U-Boote and Karl Dönitz at 02:18 GMT. Sank. Beacon Grange, a patrol vessel. From convoy, tanker 8,000 tons. Return transit via North Channel. In his log, Topp wrote calmly, "Intention, remain in North Channel as long as fuel allows." On April 30th, U-552 prowled the Atlantic, surfaced roughly 150 nautical miles west of the North Channel entrance, hunting. At 21:40 GMT, Erich Topp's periscope caught sight of a lone silhouette cutting through the dusk, the troopship SS Nerissa, steaming in from the northwest. For nearly 2 tense hours, Topp shadowed the zigzagging vessel, carefully refining his firing solution as the night sea shimmered faintly around them. When the phosphorescent water betrayed the ship's movement, Topp decided the moment had come. At a range of 1,000 meters, he loosed a spread of 3 torpedoes. One struck home astern at 0:27 Berlin time. 6 minutes later, closing in on the crippled ship as lifeboats splashed into the dark water, Topp delivered the final blow, a 4th torpedo into her aft starboard side. The Nerissa, 5,583 tons, went down with 207 lives lost, over half of them Canadians. With 4 torpedoes still in her tubes, U-552 prowled the cold Atlantic lanes leading toward the North Channel, hunting for more prey among the merchant convoys, but the ocean remained silent. No silhouettes, no propeller hum, only the low thrum of her own engines beneath gray northern skies. Nearly 2 days after sending SS Nerissa to the depths, Erich Topp turned his boat south for home. The Red Devil slipped back across the sea she had haunted, battered but unbeaten, and on the 6th of May, 1941, U-552 glided into St. Nazaire, her second patrol complete. On May 25, 1941, U-552 slipped out of St. Nazaire once more, beginning her 3rd war patrol. For 39 days, she hunted across the North Atlantic, striking with deadly precision. On June 10th, the British freighter Enderby fell victim to her torpedoes. 2 days later, the Chinese Prince met the same fate. Then, on June 18th, U-552 attacked the Norfolk under heavy seas off Ireland's northwest coast. As she moved in to finish the job, the convoy's escorts arrived, forcing Topp to dive and abandon pursuit amid the exploding depth charges.
When the Red Devil finally returned to St. Nazaire on July 2, 1941, she carried the record of another successful patrol. 3 ships destroyed, totaling 24,401 GRT. U-552's 4th patrol proved far quieter than the hunts that came before. Departing Saint Nazaire on August 18, 1941, she turned south, gliding through the warmer waters off Portugal and Spain in search of prey. Days passed in uneasy calm until at last her torpedoes found the Norwegian steamer Spind, sending it beneath the waves. But fortune faded as quickly as it came.
With no further targets and fuel running low, the Red Devil turned for home, reaching Saint Nazaire on August 26th, just 9 days after she had set out. Her next two patrols carried her deep into the open Atlantic, vast lonely waters where the threat was distant, but so too were the targets. Weeks passed, with little to show but empty horizons and the slow rhythm of the sea. Only 3 more cargo ships fell to her torpedoes during those long months. Yet, in the fading autumn of 1941, U-552 made history. On October 31st, amid tense seas and uncertain orders, her torpedoes struck the American destroyer Reuben James, sending her to the bottom in a flash of fire and controversy that echoed far beyond the Atlantic. At dawn, USS Reuben James moved through the cold North Atlantic alongside 4 other destroyers, screening convoy HX 156 in the Gray Seas west of Iceland, 600 nautical miles from shore. Tension was already high. The escort group remained on alert after USS Hillary P. Jones had made a contact and carried out a depth charge attack 2 days earlier. On October 30th, Reuben James herself made a good contact on what was thought to be a U-boat and dropped 2 charges. Craig Spowers, the ship's depth charge officer, set the port Y gun charge for 150 feet and the starboard for 200, then ordered 2 more prepared, 150 feet to starboard and 100 feet to port.
At about 0534 on the 31st of October 1941, the German submarine U-552 under Captain Lieutenant Erich Topp, and less than a week out of Saint Nazaire on her 6th patrol, launched a pair of torpedoes that slammed into Reuben James's port side. The destroyer was making roughly 8.8 knots in her assigned night station on the port quarter of HX-156 when the hits came. 1 or more explosions erupted near the forward fire room, marked by a burst of orange flame and a tall column of black smoke that lingered for minutes and could be seen from miles away.
The detonation of her forward magazine blew off the bow entirely, and Reuben James began to go down at once. Men coming topside aft saw that nothing remained forward of the 4th stack within minutes. Only Parmy G. Appleton, the helmsman, and Gerald J. Delisle, the boatswain's mate of the watch, survived the destruction in the forward section. The rest of the survivors were those berthed or on watch abaft the forward fire room. Those who lived through the initial blast saw instantly how catastrophic the damage was. The whole front of the ship lifted up, and it was gone. Gone in an instant, remembered electrician's mate Thomas Turnbull.
Fireman Norman Hingula put it bluntly, midships was now the bow.
The men who survived the explosion had no choice but to leap into the frigid sea. Reuben James carried just 2 lifeboats, and neither could save them.
One had been destroyed outright, and the other could not be lowered due to the angle of the sinking stern. Within 5 minutes, the aft section slipped beneath the waves. Of her crew of 7 officers, 136 enlisted men, and 1 enlisted passenger, 100 perished in the cold Atlantic waters, including all officers on board. Only 44 enlisted men survived. Whether Reuben James was flying the American ensign remains debated. Regardless, in the darkness of an active war zone, there was little chance nor time for Topp to clearly identify her nationality. All he could discern was a warship shielding merchantmen, and he acted on that alone. The Reuben James became the first U.S. Navy warship lost in World War II,
a grim harbinger of the greater storm yet to come. The sinking of the Reuben James sent shockwaves through the United States. Outrage filled newspapers and airwaves when Germany refused any apology, coldly insisting the destroyer had entered a declared war zone, and met its fate accordingly. Though America did not yet declare war, the attack marked a turning point. The U.S. Coast Guard was transferred from its peacetime treasury duties to serve under the Navy, and Congress swiftly amended the Neutrality Act, allowing U.S. merchant ships to sail armed and venture once more into the perilous European waters from which they had been barred since 1939. It would be 6 more weeks before the two countries were officially at war. In 1942, under the command of Erich Topp, who would later rise to admiral in the post-war Bundesmarine, U-552 joined the Second Happy Time, known to the Germans as Paukenschlag, or Operation Drum Beat. Along the unguarded American coastline, her torpedoes reaped havoc among merchant ships sailing alone through the dark Atlantic. In the first 6 months of that year, U-552 sent 13 ships to the bottom and crippled another, all in just 3 daring patrols. 2 more summer patrols claimed 4 additional victims. But on August 3, 1942, while attacking convoy ON 155, the Red Devil nearly met her end. Caught on the surface by the Canadian corvette HMCS Sackville, which raked her with gunfire and struck her conning tower with a 4-inch shell. Badly damaged, Topp limped home for repairs. Heavy seas battered her again on a later patrol, forcing another return to port where Topp was promoted, and command passed to the more cautious Klaus Popp. The sinking of the SS David H. Atwater in the cold Atlantic waters, just 10 nautical miles off Chincoteague, Virginia, became one of the most contentious episodes of the Kriegsmarine's wartime campaign. Its infamy, born not merely from the loss itself, but from the brutal manner in which it was carried out. On the night of April 2nd, 1942, at the height of the U-boat rampage known as the Second Happy Time, the unarmed coastal steamer David H. Atwater steamed north from Norfolk toward Fall River, carrying 4,000 tons of coal through the dark Atlantic swells. Around 2,100 hours between Cape Charles and Cape Henlopen, U-552 stalked her from beneath the surface before rising from the depths to strike. At just 600 yards, the submarine opened fire without warning, her 88mm deck gun and machine guns blazing. The first shell tore through the bridge, killing every officer in an instant. 93 rounds roared from the deck gun, 50 of them slamming into the helpless freighter, which listed sharply and began to sink into the night. As the Atwater began to slip beneath the waves, Topp gave a chilling order. His gunners kept firing, raking the decks and striking down sailors scrambling to lower the lifeboats. When Captain Webster was felled amid the chaos, the surviving crew abandoned their desperate efforts and hurled themselves into the dark, frigid sea. The first to reach the scene was the small Coast Guard patrol boat USCGC CG-218, which discovered a lifeboat drifting in the wreckage, 3 men alive, 3 dead. The shaken survivors said they had leapt overboard and swum through burning debris to reach safety. Minutes later came the cutter USCGC Lagar, drawn by the distant echo of gunfire. 15 minutes after the attack, she found another lifeboat, this one shattered by bullets, a single lifeless body still aboard. The sight deepened suspicions already spreading along the coast that U-boats were not just sinking ships, but murdering those who survived. The Lagar carried the rescued and the dead to Chincoteague Island before turning back to comb the dark sea for more. At 21:22, the destroyers USS Noah and USS Herbert were ordered to intercept, racing through the night toward the site of the slaughter. They arrived just before midnight, searchlights sweeping over the empty, oil-slicked waves. But the hunter was gone. U-552 had already slipped beneath the surface and vanished into the Atlantic darkness, bound to claim more victims before dawn. Whether the assault on the lifeboats was a deliberate act or a tragic result of chaos and darkness remains a matter of fierce debate. Some of U-552's crew lived to see peace again, and her commander, Erich Topp, rose to become an admiral in the post-war Bundesmarine, yet no charges were ever brought against him, unlike Helmuth von Ruckteschell, captain of the Raider Witter, who faced judgment for a similar crime. In the years that followed, U-552's fortunes waned along with those of the U-boat arm itself, as Allied technology and numbers grew too swiftly to outmatch. She was reassigned to prowl the waters off Spain, Portugal, and North Africa, closer to home, safer, yet far from the glory days of the Atlantic hunts. During the Allied invasion of North Africa, Operation Torch, Topp sought to strike at the troop convoys pouring toward the coast. He sank a small British minesweeper and later a lone cargo ship, but the gates of Gibraltar remained closed to him, and the great landings went on untouched by the Red Devil's bite.
By 1943, the tides had turned. The once feared Red Devil found herself outmatched by the Allied convoys, tightly guarded, expertly coordinated, and deadly to approach. On 2 long patrols into the North Atlantic, U-552 failed to sink a single ship. The hunter had become the hunted. During one of these missions, a Royal Air Force B-24 Liberator caught her on the surface and roared in low, releasing a string of depth charges that rocked the submarine to her core. Crippled and leaking, she limped back to base, where months of grueling repairs kept her from the sea she once ruled. In 1944, U-552 embarked on what would be her final patrol. The Atlantic was no longer her hunting ground. Allied convoys moved in tight, impenetrable formations, and the ocean that had once fed her triumphs now offered only silence. By April, she was recalled to Germany, reassigned to the 22nd U-boat flotilla as a training vessel, her days of combat behind her. She served quietly through the war's dying months until February 1945, when she was finally decommissioned. And on the 5th of May, as Germany collapsed, the Red Devil met her own end, scuttled in Wilhelmshaven Bay, sent to the depths by her own crew to deny her to the enemy. Her final tally stood at 30 ships sunk with a total tonnage of 163,756 GRT. 1 auxiliary warship sunk for a total tonnage 520 GRT. 1 warship sunk for a total tonnage 1,190 tons.
3 ships damaged for a total tonnage 26,910 GRT. This places her 12th on the all-time list of most successful Second World War U-boats. Unlike many other U-boats, which claimed their own crews through accident or misfortune, U-552 sailed through years of war, untouched by death within her steel hull. No man lost, no fatal mishap, until the very end, when fate finally caught up with the Red Devil.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you love World War II, you should join my free community in the video description and pinned comment to learn even more and talk to other history lovers. See you there!